Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Mullen, and I am Chief of Staff in the college. I am delighted to welcome you today to a Healthy Brown webinar on the 2021 academic calendar. I am joined today by University Registrar Rob Fitzgerald, Senior Associate Dean for Curriculum, Besenio Rodriguez, and Dean of the College, Rashid Zia. Today's webinar is primarily directed at undergraduate students. The graduate school is also organizing a series of webinars that will focus on topics specific to graduate students. As a note for attendees, today's webinar will be recorded. You will receive an email with a link to the recording via the email address that you used to register for this event. And we will also post webinar recordings on the Healthy Brown website. To begin, Dean Zia will provide an overview of the 2020-2021 academic calendar, and following that, we will open this meeting up to a question and answer session. And with that, I will turn it over to Dean Zia.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. As I believe you all know, President Paxton announced this week that the university is going to transition to a de-densified 3-semester model for the following academic year. And so what we wanted to do is just give you a real practical introduction to what that calendar is going to look like. So let me just start off by sharing with you some slides. Just want to start off, and please know that one of the guiding principles as we tried to construct this calendar in conversation with students, with staff and faculty, were to try to keep things as simple as possible while providing time to ensure your health and safety if you so choose to come back to campus. So the fall 2020 semester is going to begin with a quiet start in early September, as the semester always does. And we're going to conclude with the option of remote studies during reading period and exams after Thanksgiving. So to be very specific, there's going to be a staggered series of student arrivals on campus, and all students will need to arrive on campus by September 2nd to observe a quiet period. That period is going to allow for testing, for orientation to new kinds of rules and activities that we'll have on campus, and also an opportunity for virtual shopping period, which we'll speak about later, so that you can help pick the classes that are most engaging for you. Classes will begin on schedule on September 9th. That is the Wednesday after Labor Day. We'll continue to have the 2 breaks that you've always known. So we'll have a break in October, a long weekend for Indigenous Peoples Day. We'll also have a long weekend recess around Thanksgiving. In addition, this year, we will have a recess on Tuesday, November 3rd for Election Day. The biggest difference is going to be what happens to the placement and timing of reading period. So after Thanksgiving break, we will have a week-long optional reading period, as we always have. But that reading period will be online. And so students will have the opportunity to either choose to be here in residence for that reading period or at home. And the key is, if you choose to travel away from campus for the Thanksgiving Day holidays, we will ask that you remain home for the duration of the semester. In addition to remote reading period, we'll also have a period of remote exams, and those will conclude in mid-December. Then we'll have our normal break for the holidays. The key difference is that the semester will begin, spring semester will begin in mid-January, a little bit earlier than it traditionally has. And we will also be eliminating the week-long spring recess to allow for an early conclusion in April. So what will happen is we'll have a welcome and orientation period for new students in early January. The precise dates are going to be determined. They're going to be based on guidance, and decisions will be made in mid-fall based on the current public health situation. Classes will begin on the Wednesday after Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so January 20th. We will have 2 long weekends during spring. One will be the President's Day weekend that we've always had, and we're also introducing a new long weekend that'll begin on April 9th. That'll be just before the start of that remote reading period and finals period again. And those activities will be online so that students that so choose can return home to participate in those activities, but you are always welcome to stay on campus during that time so you can be here for reading period and exams. Then finally, the new 3rd semester will begin in mid-May, and it's going to be a full 14-week long academic semester. It'll start on Wednesday, May 2nd, There will be 2 long weekends, one for Memorial Day, another for Independence Day. And then again, we'll conclude with a remote reading period and final exams to allow for early travel. As you might notice, this new summer semester includes the Memorial Day weekend that we've traditionally used for commencement and reunion weekend. So a really important note is that commencement and reunion weekend has been scheduled for Friday, April 30th through Sunday, May 2nd. And at this ceremony, we'll be celebrating both the graduating class of 2021 next year, as well as the class of 2020, whose commencement activities were postponed due to this past spring in the public health emergency. I wanted to help lay this out just quickly for you. The 3 semesters, if laid side by side, they look very similar. So they always begin on a Wednesday. They include 2 long weekends. They have a week for remote reading period and a week of remote exams. And if you want more information about what courses are going to be offered in which of these semesters, they're available at this link, brown.edu/go/fall 2020 provisional course list. As soon as the university made a decision, academic departments have begun to enter in their courses into our traditional banner system, and they will be published beginning July 27th in Courses at Brown, so you can access them. To give you some context, we have over 800 courses, actually now over 900 courses scheduled for the fall semester. Of those, 40% of those classes, more than 40% of those classes are scheduled to be hybrid or in-person-like experiences. So that's over 400 classes. If you want to look at the courses, we did want to provide you with that link. And so I hope that that gives you a brief introduction to the state of the calendar. The last part I wanted to say is just a little bit about who is going to be here in each of those semesters. So as President Paxton's message shared, we are going to be welcoming back all continuing students. So all students at semester level 2 and above to choose whether they'd like to be in residence on campus with approved off-campus housing in Providence, or whether they would like to study remotely in the fall. In addition to continuing students, we are welcoming new transfer and resumed undergraduate education students, those who oftentimes begin at higher semester levels and are most interested in the classes that are accessible to upper class students. We have decided to postpone the arrival of first-year students until the spring semester so that they can have 2 consecutive in-residence semesters if they so choose. And during the fall, all first-year students will have access to enrolling in 1 free Brown course remotely, in addition to other enrichment activities that we'll offer. We don't yet know what's going to happen in spring because it's going to depend on public health guidance, but it is our sincere hope that we'll be able to welcome all students back to Brown in the spring. If we're unable to, it is possible that we might ask sophomore students to delay their second semester until summer or to take the spring semester remotely. And we'll have more guidance about that in mid-fall. So with that, I just wanted to turn it back to Sarah so we can start to answer some of your questions.
Great, thank you, Dean Zia. So let's transition to Q&A. We've received almost 100 questions from students, parents, and families in advance of today's webinar. So many of those questions actually included topics such as athletics, health and safety, housing, international student concerns, and leave taking. I wanted to let all of the attendees know that the university has organized a series of webinars that have or will soon cover many of these topics. And so I would encourage everyone to keep an eye on the main webinar page on the Healthy Brown website to learn more about past and upcoming webinars and access recordings when they become available. As we move through the rest of the questions, I do encourage you to continue to submit questions through the Q&A tool. And when you do so, please include your name as well as your class year if that's relevant. So I wanted to start off by noting that we did receive a number of questions about the fall semester, particularly related to different student choices regarding studying on campus or remotely, options to switch in the following semester, and then also the 3 semesters, if there are opportunities to enroll in all 3 semesters. And I'm going to turn this one over to Dean Zia to answer.
Thank you, Sarah. So I want to share that Brown's plan for the 2020-2021 academic year is meant to provide you with as much choices as possible within the public health constraints of the de-densified semester. So immediately following President Paxton's announcement, for those continuing students as well as new transfer and resumed undergraduate education students, you should have received an email from myself and Vice President Estes. And in that, it contained a link to an important form. It's called the Fall 2020 Location of Study Form. And this is, we've asked that you complete this form by July 15th. And the set of information we wanted to know here is where you would like to study in the fall. Whether you plan on returning to campus and living in on-campus housing, whether you plan on living off campus with approval, if you're a commuter student living locally, whether you plan to live at home, and also whether or not, and every student has this option, whether you would like to live and study remotely outside of the Providence area. Now, we asked for this choice by July 15th so that we could help empower your decision, help ensure that we can provide you support with housing, with registration, with travel, with visas for international students. And so that's what dictated this timeline. Separate from where you choose to live though, whether you choose to be here in Providence in residence or to study remotely outside the Providence area, every student will have the choice of online participation in their courses next semester. So all courses being offered at the university will have an online participation option. So even if you decide to come to Providence, if you believe it's in your best interest for your learning goals, for your personal health and safety, to participate in courses online, you'll have that opportunity. So that's the main set of goals, the main set of choices. You'll notice that we call it the Fall 2020 because we wanted to offer you these options for this semester. We hope that we'll actually be able to offer greater options in future semesters. And so I do believe that students will have a choice to make that same decision again if circumstances change, if they'd like to study remotely, for example. All students will have the option, if they so choose, to study remotely in the spring. For first-year students, you did not receive this form because what we're going to ask of you is to tell us a little bit more about how you would like to engage with the university in the fall. We're really sad that we're not able to welcome you in September, but we still believe you're joining our community in September. And we're going to try to be reaching out to you, not only to talk to you about registering in an online class, if you so choose during the fall semester, but also what other type of enrichment, advising, mentoring activities you'd like to participate in the fall. So those are the main choices.
Thank you, Dean Zia. We did also receive a couple of questions about accommodations for students through student accessibility services and how those will work this year, particularly around deadlines for accessibility requests. And I'm going to turn this one over to Dean Rodriguez to answer.
Hi, so in response to that question about student accessibility services and accommodations, there is no change from a traditional semester. There are no firm deadlines for students to submit paperwork for their accommodations. That continues to take place on a rolling basis.
Thank you, Dean Rodriguez. So the next set of questions that we received from a number of attendees were around important dates and deadlines. Many students had questions about shopping period, concentration declaration deadlines, and whether there might be a summer session or a winter session next year. I'm going to turn this one over to the University Registrar, Rob Fitzgerald, to answer.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Am I unmuted? Okay, great. Yeah, so as Dean Zia laid out, the calendar is posted on our website. The academic calendar is posted on our website with some of the relevant concrete deadlines that have been established for a number of years. And those are governed by the faculty. So they do remain the same in terms of the last day to add a course without a fee. It's still going to be the first 2 weeks of classes. It is important to note, though, that we are starting the virtual shopping experience or the virtual add drop experience prior to the beginning of classes than we normally do. So there is an additional time frame to explore classes, to make changes to the schedule. There will be more information coming out in the next week or so from both the college and the graduate school for graduate students about the pre-registration process It is critical that all students read that, including the first years who will be able to take a online class in the fall semester, because there'll be specific instructions on how to do this, which will be a little bit different than what we normally do. The other important thing to note is that for dates and deadlines such as concentration declaration, obviously, it's important for rising juniors to have their concentration declared prior to early August and advisor approved via ask, so that we can allow your pre-registration to be processed. And it's also important so that we know which courses are going to be required for you in terms of what are actual concentration program requirements. As far as deadlines such as the last day to add a second concentration if you're going into your 8th semester as a senior, all of that information will be evolving. We'll be working with the college. Now that we have a 3-semester model, we have to be very deliberate in terms of reconstructing what we normally do in a 2-semester model. So please be aware that as we make changes to the academic calendar for those types of deadlines, as well as future pre-registration time periods, we will be sending out communications to the entire student population so that they know and can keep track of that.
And I wanted to add, I wanted to thank University Registrar Fitzgerald for all of his help. I think maybe we can give a little bit of a preview of what the differences will be around pre-registration and around virtual shopping. So, and I want to preface this by saying, our hope is that some of the things that we're trying out for the next year will help to improve the Brown experience for years to come. And so we know that students have always found the process of pre-registration and shopping somewhat challenging. They are quintessential parts of the Brown experience, but we think we might even be able to make them better this year. One of the challenges of pre-registration, of course, is that pre-registration happens on a time sequence, so that pre-registration has traditionally opened at 8 a.m. on some morning, and it's been about when you pushed a button as to whether or not you received participation in certain courses. This time, we're not going to be able to do that because we know that you're located all around the world. And so what we set up is a system so that we can help share with you all of the course information through CAD. We will be asking you to place the courses that you're interested in into your primary cart in CAD as if you were about to push the button. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at all of the courses that every student has in their cart at the start of pre-registration. And we're going to try to see if we can optimize them based on all of the parameters that in the past we would have delayed starts for. So for example, by class year, by concentration, by requirements. And we're going to hopefully be able to help register you in several courses to begin the add drop period. And then what will happen is that you'll have opportunities to start adding and dropping courses before the start of the semester. During this period, we are hopeful that many faculty are going to set up Zoom conversations with you to go over the syllabus, to get started even before the semester arrives. And you will continue to have access to Canvas courses for those classes that you're interested in shopping. During the quiet period, the first week of classes will be fully online. So from September 9th through September 15th, there will be all online courses so that as many students are interested can participate and sit in on classes so that you can decide what classes are most beneficial to you. And we'll continue to have the standard 2-week period for shopping. So you can add courses without permission, without a fee or any kind of permission up through the 2nd week of classes. And we'll have our traditional 4th week deadline for adding courses as well as changing your grade options. So we hope that we're going to be able to provide you with a little bit more information about courses, a little bit more access to courses, and that we're going to be able to help you ensure you get more of the classes that you're interested in this year. And I want to, again, thank the University Registrar for making that possible. This is a pretty massive change of the processes of the university.
Great, thank you, Dean Zia. I also wanted to just quickly follow up and ask if University Registrar Fitzgerald can speak a little bit about summer session and winter session for the upcoming year. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. I forgot to mention that. So the winter session and the traditional 7-week summer session for the upcoming academic year has been temporarily suspended. And that's simply because we're obviously starting a winter spring semester much earlier than we normally do. That would be typically in the middle of the winter session. And then the summer session, because the summer is going to be a full semester experience beginning in mid-May, the 7-week session that we traditionally have is going to be temporarily suspended for this academic year. It will come back in a future year.
Thank you very much. So the next set of questions that we received from a number of attendees was about, we received a huge number of questions about specific course offerings and course information, particularly things like what kind of courses will be hybrid, which courses will be online, what does that actually mean? And then, you know, what course sequencing considerations were taken into account during the academic planning process. And I think another set of questions that we received were around laboratory courses. And I'm going to turn this one over to Dean Rodriguez to answer.
Thanks, Sarah. So understandably, students have questions about how they'll be able to do their concentrations in this new academic year model. All classes will be offered either online or through a hybrid combination of online and in person. And so the former option is for students, students who may not be able to be on campus, and so they'll be able to engage in courses remotely as they did in the second half of the spring. For students that are going to be in residence in the Providence area, courses that are over 20 students will all, of course, also be online. In many cases, there will be recitations, just as we have normally. So normally where we have a larger lecture course, there's often a section. And so there will be opportunities to engage in person, whether through labs or in sections in smaller groups. And that information will all be published per course, as Dean Zia mentioned, on July 27th in Courses at Brown online. So you'll be able to see specifically which courses will be offered in which formats and if there are enrollment limits. In terms of the planning process, there was an extensive process with all of the academic programs and departments where they were asked to ensure that there were clear and accessible pathways for students to complete their concentration, regardless of which 2 semesters they were enrolled, so that the courses that were chosen for fall, spring, and summer, and in some cases offered more than once during over more than one semester, were designed with a few things in mind. One is ensuring that students are able to complete concentration requirements and are able to follow course sequencing so that they're able to take prerequisites and not fall behind. And also beyond course requirements, departments were asked to consider things like external requirements. So for example, health careers, to ensure that students would be able to take their pre-med requirements, for example, on regardless of which semesters they were, they would be enrolled. I'm gonna turn it over. I know that there was a question about labs in particular, and so I'm gonna turn it over to Dean Zia to answer that specific question. But I know we've got a lot of questions about, which semesters students are gonna be in residence, and it's important to note that the academic departments have scheduled their course offerings based on the populations that, that were in the president's announcement. So while there will be a small number of, for example, first-year seminars in the fall for students that are opting to enroll in a first seminar remotely, most of the first-year seminars will be in the spring and summer. And similarly, most courses that are for, advanced level requirements and such are going to be offered in the fall and spring, as those are the semesters in which, for instance, juniors and seniors will be enrolled. So I'm going to pass it over to Dean Zia to talk a little bit more about labs and how those will be carried out.
Thank you, Dean Rodriguez. I would say that, so all of the faculty have been working this summer thinking about pedagogy for next year. And as you asked in your questions, a lot of issues came up about how do we do components that we've always done in the same space and time. And so This includes both laboratory courses, performance arts courses, things that we oftentimes think about as needing us to be in the same space. I'm going to tell you that I've been really impressed, inspired by the kind of pedagogical innovations that faculty are thinking about for the next year. Just if you take the topic of labs, people have started to think about what is the essence of the lab experience meant to be? Are we trying to train around certain, let's say, physical concepts about how to explore the empirical world? Is it about learning some particular set of skills? And this time has forced us to reimagine what labs might be. And I've heard of 3 basic approaches that people are taking on. One is that in some laboratory courses, people are going to be bringing the laboratory to you remotely. Whether you happen to be on campus or studying outside the Providence area, they will be helping to mail lab kits to you so that you can do the experiments exactly where you are. As you might imagine, there are some advanced laboratories that can't be done that way. We are not shipping liquid helium or liquid nitrogen in the mail. So there are also experiences where we have to figure out how to help bring you wherever you are, whether you're on campus or somewhere else, into that lab so you can perform those series of experiments. For people that are going to be on campus, that's going to mean social distancing inside high-tech lab spaces. And for people who are not here, it's going to mean bringing you into that experience virtually. And then the final set are a series of classes thinking about entirely online, technologically connected ways of performing experiments. The best examples of this are in disciplines where there's a lot of field exploration, and people are thinking about how we perform those trips today, and also how we can help to record those trips not only through your experience this year, but how they might be used in subsequent years to guide people in their studies. So I know it's going to be different in the laboratory sciences, in the performing arts, but I'm very confident that there are going to be some aspects of the instruction for next year that we're going to keep with us for years into the future.
Thank you, Dean Zia. Another question that we talked a little bit about already, but I was hoping we could talk a little bit more about is around academic advising and course registration. So how academic advising will work and how students can access academic advising and ask questions in advance of the pre-registration period. And I will, another kind of specific area too is around the 19-person limit for in-person courses and what that means for students who may be remote or unable to come to to classes in person. So I will turn that one back over to Dean Zia to talk a little bit more about that.
In terms of advising, I know that we've oftentimes had the process of pre-registration occur in spring for the fall. We're trying to set up a series of advising opportunities so that continuing students can speak with their faculty advisors, but also can speak with the academic advising deans in the college before and around the August 5th pre-registration period, also into the August add drop period that will be entirely new. One of the key things I would ask in this process is, it is a wonderful time if you are a continuing student, particularly if you're a junior or senior, to relook at your concentration declaration and to update your concentration declaration in as much as is possible. With the optimization of pre-registration, we're going to try to use your concentration declarations to make sure that you get into those perhaps limited enrollment courses that are required for your degree. But also it helps to trigger a new conversation with your concentration advisor, or you can use that to have a conversation with an academic advising dean. For second-year students who are just beginning that process, please note, you do not have to declare a concentration, but you can reach out to your continuing advisor. In the vast majority of cases, your sophomore year advisor will continue to be the person that you come to know through your first year experience, and they would be glad to hear from you. There'll also be opportunities for first year students to connect with Meiklejohns in August, as well as academic advising deans, and we'll introduce you to your academic advisors before the start of the semester. With the specific thing about courses, I want to be clear, just as we've provided all students with the option of letting us know whether they would like to take their courses next year online or here through some hybrid experience, we have provided that same opportunity to instructors. And so there are limits due to public health guidelines. All classes of 20 or more people will be fully online. But for classes that are smaller than that, so 19 or fewer students, it is at the discretion of the instructor. And what's happened is that the instructors have reached out to us as part of their academic planning. They let us know if they want it to be hybrid or fully online. As I mentioned before, 400 classes, unique class codes for the next year, are scheduled to be hybrid-like experiences. That's about a little bit more than 40% of the courses that are being offered. And you will be able to see all of that information in CAB when it is launched later this year. I don't know if Registrar Fitzgerald wants to add anything about the 19-person limit. I think there are some questions people have about caps and about how that's going to work out, but please know that those in-person sections, those hybrid sections, will be capped at 19.
Yeah, so I can add, Dean Zia, the 19-person limit for in-person sections or courses, if they're small seminars. Yes, for in-person meetings, we have to keep that because that's our public health guidance. But obviously, if there's a remote student who's joining that, we will be monitoring that constantly throughout the shopping period and the registration period to ensure that unless the course is physically capped, you know, based off of a set enrollment limit by the College Curriculum Council, we will still allow students to be registered over the 19 if some of those students are joining remotely, obviously. We're not going to say, okay, if you're a remote student and you're joining a seminar that has 19 in-person students, we're not going to stop that student from registering in the class. And the instructors will see this on their class list. They will know who is participating purely remotely versus in person, so that they are well aware that they have to make accommodations to help people join from a remote location with in-person students so that it's a more organic experience in that regard.
Thank you. So another kind of huge number of questions that we received in advance of today were around reading period and final exams and student options for being on and off campus during before and after breaks. So what we anticipate that will look like for the fall semester and potentially beyond. So I'm hoping that University Registrar Rob Fitzgerald can help us answer that question a little bit.
Under presentation, the reading period, as always, is optional. It's up to the instructor, but that entire week-long period will be remote. So even if you are attending a class that does not observe the reading period, they will be required to provide that remotely because the thinking is during those periods, we will have large numbers of students who will leave campus and therefore they can't return to campus. So everyone's engagement at that point will be remote, similar to what it will be like the first week of fall classes as well. So everything will be online. But as Dean Zia mentioned, if students remain on campus, they can continue to do so. They will engage in the same experience that students who go back home will. But obviously, they will be able to visit the dining hall, visit the libraries, whatever may be required to continue their studies. The exam period, again, all exams will not be held. There will be no in-person final exams. All final exams, if they have them, will be held remotely. Just to give parents a sense of that, there's approximately 25% of our courses that actually hold formal in-person final exams, and they will be required to do so remotely. So, and there's more information and advisement about best practices that are going out to faculty on how to best deliver final exams remotely. So it'll be probably a much better experience than it may have been in the spring for some courses because now they've had more time to plan for it.
Thank you. And Dean Zia, I'm wondering if you can speak briefly to questions about students being able to stay in between breaks and if there will be more guidance about that forthcoming.
So as some of you know, Brown always has some number of students who are unable to leave our campus between breaks and recesses. This might be for reasons of travel bans or travel complications, or it might be people whose home situations don't allow them to return. And what we've always done is we consider these cases on an individual basis and we provide support. As many of you know, when we asked most students to leave the campus in spring, there were a number of students for whom that wasn't a real option. And we continue to have some students that live on campus with us even to this day because of such complications. So it is my expectation that we will always have opportunities for a small number of students for whom it is issues of health and safety might prevent them from returning home. But we also wanted to make it your choice. So again, I just want to emphasize this thing about the remote reading period and final exam period. We know that some students are going to want to go home for the Thanksgiving recess, and we want that to be your option. But we also know that when you go home, coming back in the current public health situation, it's not feasible to come back and to isolate for 14 days. And it's so we're providing that choice to you. It's about whether you want to stay for reading period and exam period and be here. And if you choose to stay through break, you have that option, or if you would like to leave. Brown is also going to be doing a number of things for our students, for example, for our international students, for our students with highest demonstrated financial need, to help support them around the break periods. If these apply to you, we'll be reaching out to you and providing further guidance, and we'll always make that guidance available on our website. So please know that we are here for you. We understand that there are a range of circumstances, and we want to help support you in and around break periods. But we do expect that the vast majority of students will be returning home for break. We will still continue to have a rather long, more than 4-week break for the holiday period. And we'd like you to be able to go home, rest, and relax. The other thing to note is, and there'll be a special period about housing and dining. Please know that housing is going to be different for next year. It is our expectation that most people should be traveling light to campus, that your housing assignments on campus will be for the semester, that you'll need to move out at the end of the semester just in order to make space in case there have to be changes of room assignments. Of course, all of that will be figured out during the fall term, but just know that there'll be some things that are a little bit different because it's our hope to be able to reconvene with everyone in the spring if public health circumstances allow.
Thank you. Another couple of questions that we received have been about leave taking and part-time study. Before I turn this over to Dean Zia, I will note that the college and student support services will be holding a leave taking webinar on Monday morning at 10 a.m. And I would encourage students to attend if you are able. And with that, I will turn it over to Dean Zia.
Thank you, Sarah. So as you may know, Brown has always had a generous and flexible leave policy. We usually in a traditional year have between 100 and 200 students take a personal leave of absence to pursue studies or pursue personal choices, employment, military obligations. We anticipate that there'll be a greater number of leave takers next year. And we are setting up a series of opportunities, not just the webinar, but we'll have advising time periods all of next week and for the next following weeks to help support your questions around leave taking. The one thing I'll tell you is that the university's deadline for leave taking in the fall was always May 1st, but we will continue to consider late requests even at this time. The key is to get some guidance around what your plans are for the subsequent year, and we want to know that we'll be able to help support you. The other question around part-time study is one that I think we should be clear about. So Brown's system empowers you to make a variety of choices about your career. We're not a system that's built on asking you to pay per course. So as you probably know, Brown charges tuition, for example, by semester, not by course. And as a student, you get to decide if that full-time load is 3 to 5 courses in a year. Brown does not have a system of part-time study. We only have the system of full-time study where you make choices around your pursuits. If you have questions around that, we'd be glad to talk about it during the leave policy, the leave taking seminars. But I just wanted to be clear that we do not have a system of part-time study. And that's why we are asking all students to think about which of how they want to participate in the academic year. And the plans have been laid forward so that every student, if they so choose, can have 2 residential semesters in the coming year to continue with their academic plans.
Thank you. We also have been receiving a number of questions about the first year experience and course options for this fall, including in particular what courses will be available to first year students, and then also what sophomores can expect for the spring semester and the rest of the year. Dean Rodriguez and Dean Zia, can you speak to these topics?
Sure, thanks, Sarah. There are a number of specific questions about whether, for instance, first years would only be able to, for example, if they chose to take a fall course remotely, if they'd only be able to take first year seminars. That's not the case. So just as in any semester, there are many, many courses that are open to first years. If there isn't a specific prerequisite that you haven't met yet, or a class-specific requirements, say it's a senior seminar, we don't expect there's no change to the types of courses that first years are eligible to take. You will be eligible to take first year seminars, which are only sort of set aside for first years, but there are a number of gateway and introductory courses that we anticipate that first years will be able to register for.
And I just want to add that this is, as Dean Rodriguez says, this is again about your choice. We want to make clear that this is an option. You don't have to complete a requirement in this. If you have never taken a course on Egyptology and Assyriology and you're excited about doing that, take that course. If you are really eager to take a mathematics course, pursue that. What we're trying to do is to get you into the process of choosing your own courses. One of the things that's very unique about Brown is that we have no general education requirements, right? We only ask that you explore your own interests. And so we are going to be having conversations with you about what that might mean and how you might structure that. We are also aware, I think Dean Rodriguez and I both, especially as Brown alum, how difficult it was even for us to choose our first 4 classes. And I am sorry that we've made it even more difficult for you because there's only one. But we want you to know you don't have to even take one. It's only there if you want that opportunity. And we've made very clear in our discussions with the academic departments, and they all understand, and the concentrations understand, there are no obligations here. This is just one more opportunity to begin your exploration. And you're going to have 4 more years after that at Brown, 8 more semesters to pursue all of your interests.
Thank you. And Dean Rodriguez and Dean Zia, can you talk a little bit about what sophomores can expect in terms of the spring semester and the rest of the year?
I didn't know. So I can say first that please know that if you see them, if you see the plans, our goal is really to continue to offer the level of variety, the breadth of courses that we've always offered to sophomore students. We know that you're still exploring. You haven't yet declared your concentration, and we want you to do that. We hope that actually, if anything, that the new virtual shopping period will give you a little bit more room for exploration so that you'll be able to see a little bit more of what's going on at the campus. There will be, I believe right now, over 900 courses, maybe 950 courses planned for the spring semester. Sophomore students will be able to pursue those courses in a range of disciplines. Please also know that we've thought about the course sequencing so that if you're, for example, a sophomore student that just got excited by computer science and you want to start with the introductory computer science sequence, the computer science department has thought about a pathway that allows you to do that in fall and then in spring, or in fall and then in summer, or if you want, in spring and summer, especially for first year students. So all of those pathways have been labeled out. The key thing is that we don't yet know if public health circumstances will allow us to invite all students back in residence in spring, or whether all students would choose to be back in residence in spring too. So there is, again, a possibility that we might need to ask sophomores to either take the spring semester remotely or to delay their start to summer. And if that happens, we would, of course, look at the curriculum again and make sure that all pathways are available to sophomores. So the course list that we share, we call it a partial and provisional course list. It is partial because a lot of new courses haven't yet been added into the system, so they don't exist there. So I just want to be clear about that. There are more courses being added. It's provisional in that things may change. The semester that they offer might change, but we just wanted to give you an idea of the breadth of academic planning that has gone on. And if we need to change the plans again, because public health circumstances won't allow us to bring everybody back, I would expect that the courses in spring and summer would also change slightly as a result to make sure that there is more opportunities in both spring and summer for all students, whether they're here or studying remotely.
Thank you. So one other set of questions that I see, I'm seeing a lot of in the Q&A and also in the prior questions that we received when folks registered, was about what opportunities will be available for students during the term when they're not enrolled, including whether they can enroll in courses or independent studies, whether they can participate in co-curricular opportunities like research or internships, or whether they can continue with campus employment opportunities if they have a job on campus. And I will turn this back over to Dean Zia and Dean Rodriguez if they can spend a few minutes talking about this.
Dean Rodriguez, would you like to talk a little bit about plans for the spring semester, maybe?
Sure. So for students that would normally be enrolled, that are not on any kind of leave of absence or anything, but that happens to be, for instance, if they choose, for example, as Dean Zia was saying, sophomores who might, the public health situation requires it, be not enrolled in the spring semester. Our plan is in some ways to treat that like a regular summer, whereby there would be a number of opportunities for co-curricular engagement. This year, in light of the pandemic and all of the economic challenges that many of our students and their families were facing, we created a new program that was more flexible, short-term research and internship experiences called the Sprint program. We are looking at the possibility of creating that again as an option for in the spring for students that are not enrolled. And so you'll hear more about that as the fall continues. But our hope is to really provide experiences and opportunities for students to be able to engage, knowing that learning doesn't just happen in the classroom. And so if you are going to be enrolled in the summer and in the summer, but not in the spring, that is still an opportunity for you to engage in some significant learning. Normally, students are not allowed to participate in on-campus activities if they are on a leave of absence. So that really, the opportunities for engagement really are for students that are not on a leave, but just on their sort of off semester, just as during summer vacation normally.
And we always think about these experiences as Brown students. You are active partners in creating knowledge, in sharing knowledge, and applying knowledge in service of the world. We know that the learning that you're having, you're helping to create knowledge through research. You're helping to share knowledge through the activities where you teach and mentor others. And you're helping apply knowledge oftentimes in service of our communities. And so we are looking at that breadth of research, teaching, community engagement, public service opportunities for the year ahead. And I would say that we're even thinking about those as just themes for first years around in the very first semester. So it's going to give us a little bit more time to welcome you to the Brown community. We're going to need to do that online, virtually. Again, it'll be entirely optional, but we'll be talking to you about concepts of civic engagement and public responsibility. We'll have an opportunity to expand the kind of orientation activities that we would have done over the course of the fall semester. And we also hope that we're going to be able to connect you with faculty, with alumni, with students online. And so as people probably have seen online this summer, we've had a series of programs, sprints, which Basenia spoke about, Dean Rodriguez spoke about, but also the Brown Connect Summer Institute, where students have been working in partnership with other students and faculty, alumni, Brown family members. And we expect that we'll be able to do more of that, not just in the fall, but throughout the following year. It's going to be for first years. This is just to give you a sense, an introduction to the Brown community. It's not these full-time experiences. And then in spring and in summer, we expect to rerun all of the programs that we traditionally do during the summer period for both spring and summer, especially if we're not able to welcome everybody back in the spring.
Thank you so much. I think that covers a lot of the questions, and I know we're running short on time, but I am hoping that our panelists can talk a little bit about kind of what may happen if things change or shift in during the fall semester. So in the middle of the semester, what might happen if the public health situation changes, when we might expect a decision about the spring semester, and kind of timeline related topics. And I'll turn that over to Dean Zia to start with.
So please know that our first responsibility is for your health and safety and that of our broader community. So the decisions that we make, the reasons why we need to continue to be flexible is that none of us know precisely what is going to happen in the fall in terms of COVID-19. And so we just have to be a little bit vigilant and flexible. There is a chance that the modes of instruction would need to change in the fall. There is a chance that we might have to scale back, at least on some of the in-person opportunities, or there's a chance that circumstances get better. And so that at the beginning, we're going to start with a lot of restrictions about how we move about on campus and how spaces, common spaces like libraries use. And it is my sincere hope that those things become more flexible throughout the semester. The decisions around the spring are going to be made with the best public health guidance that we have. And it doesn't make sense today to start making decisions ahead about what's going to happen in the spring. So we've laid out for you, I think, our two really broad options. The hopeful one is that the situation improves and we are able to welcome back all students who choose. And even in that event, we again say who choose, because if you'd like to take your spring semester remotely, that'll still be an option to you. And in circumstances where we cannot and we need to continue in a de-densified mode, it would only be first years, juniors, and seniors that be asked to be in residence if they so choose. So those are the two things. That decision is going to be made in mid-fall. And it will be informed, I would say, about how the experience at the beginning of the fall semester goes as well. We know how vital it is for us to be together as a community, whether we're doing it like this online or we're doing it in residence. And it is my hope that when we come together, we're going to take care of one another and do the best that we can to preserve our community's health. But some of these things are outside of our community. The state of the public health situation is determined by what's going to be happening in our local area, around the country. And some of that guidance is outside of our control if they're changing state or federal requirements.
Thank you. An additional question that I've seen a few times in the Q&A is about how students will be able to access course materials during the semester, particularly if they are remotely. So talking about textbooks and other course resources. And I will turn that back over to Dean Zia and also Dean Rodriguez.
So please note that our colleagues in the Brown University bookstore are doing their very best to figure out how to get materials to you. They're going to be really excited to share with you. You're going to be able to, hopefully with a click of a button, take all of the courses that are in your cart, add those courses, add the course materials for that into your cart and purchase them remotely. And depending on where you are, that might mean that you're going to get access to digital materials if digital options are available, or to get physical books mailed to you. In addition, departments in the bookstore are also looking at, as we said, lab kits or supply kits. For those of you continuing sophomore students or upper class students who are part of the Brown Course Materials Supply Pilot, the BCMS program, please know that we are extending that BCMS program. It will include all first year students, all sophomore students on university scholarship, as well as all students in upper class years with zero parent contribution. And so that program is still going to be accessible to you. And because of that, that's why we're working on all of these programs to help get resources to you. I do imagine that there are going to be a lot more online resources. But in addition to that, we will work to send you the physical resources that you need. And so I would say look out for some communications coming to you from the bookstore and others.
Thank you. I think we have time for one or two more questions. I'd like to direct a question to University Registrar Rob Fitzgerald. Can you talk a little bit about the hybrid versus online option? We've talked a bit about this already, but can you talk a little bit about whether students can take a hybrid course remotely, what sort of the difference is, and if they can kind of course correct midstream if they aren't able to make it to the class in person?
Yeah, sure. So there will be a lot of differences that students will see, particularly continuing students, when we re-release courses at Brown on July 27th. One of the things that continuing students will notice that first years haven't necessarily seen is that a lot of the discussion sections will be set up in advance with actual meeting times, and they will be linked to the lecture. So if it's a very large service or gateway course, obviously the lecture will be primarily online, but there will be in-person discussion sections associated with that, and there'll be quite a number of them. And there'll be more instructions that the individual faculty will provide to the students in terms of, you know, how discussion sections will be structured. But the important thing to remember is that what students are normally used to is that they typically only pre-register for the lecture, and then things get decided on an ad hoc basis like 2 weeks after the semester starts. We're obviously not in a situation where we can continue to do that any longer. So in fact, from a student perspective, there's going to be more clarity in terms of how in-person discussion or recitation sections will be set up in advance. Labs that are going to be in person or in a hybrid model will be set up in advance, and they will have that information available to them so that they can make better choices. They will have a more predefined schedule come the pre-registration optimization and throughout the virtual add drop period. So I think that is an actual positive development that's come out of this, is that because we have to de-densify the classroom spaces, that departments have to do a lot more planning in advance about when courses are going to take place and how they are going to be structured versus a mixture of online and in person. And we're trying to make it as clear to the students as possible when Courses at Brown is relaunched so that they can identify those opportunities. And as I mentioned before, if things change, heaven forbid that a student get ill and they need to be quarantined, obviously that student can continue to participate in the class remotely. And that's what the directive has been to all faculty, that they need to deliver the course, even if it's designated as an in-person course, to folks who are, for some reason, one way or another, studying remotely so that they can facilitate earning the credit and progressing academically.
Thank you so much. And I'm now going to turn it over for some brief concluding remarks to Dean Zia, and then we'll wrap up for today. Dean Zia?
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Dean Rodriguez, Registrar Fitzgerald, for joining us. Thank you all for making the time to join us wherever you happen to be in the world. We know that we were only able to answer some of your questions today. And please know that we are available to speak with you. There is future webinar series. I think we're going to put that up at the end of this, these concluding remarks. And please know that all of the advising deans, the academic advising deans in the college, the student support deans in the Division of Campus Life are prepared to have more individual conversations with you after this to help you. I just want to tell you, we understand that after a period of large uncertainty, we've provided you with a lot of information in a relatively short period of time. And we've asked you again to make some choices about what you would like the fall semester to look like. We understand that this is difficult. I want you to know that we want you to take your time with this decision, and we're trying our best to lay out all of the options so that whatever set of choices you want to make about your studies for the year ahead are accessible to you. Again, whether you think it is in your best interest to try to come back in residence in Providence, we are here to help support you with questions around housing and travel and support to be here. Even if you come to Providence, you'll have the option of taking your courses online if that's what you determine to be best for you. Or if you think it is best for you to continue your studies remotely from where you are outside of the Providence area, you are more than welcome to do that. I want to say, I know that there's a webinar this morning about international students, but I just wanted to make some brief comments to say, I cannot imagine how difficult this week must have been with the issuance of the guidance. As an immigrant to this country myself, one who every other member of my family was here on student visas, I know that there is a great deal of uncertainty and concern. Please know that, in our opinion, the hybrid approach that Brown is pursuing will provide you with a tremendous number of options. Again, approximately 400 of the courses planned for the fall semester will be with this hybrid experience. And we will be working through that optimized pre-registration process to help prioritize access to at least one hybrid course for all students that are choosing to be in residence. And we're able to do that this year, thanks in part to the great work of the University Registrar. We are confident that, I'm sincerely confident that every student that chooses, that wants to have a hybrid course, or who needs to have a hybrid course for their continued studies in the United States will have access to that. If you have further questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We're going to continue to try to be here to reach out to you. We are looking forward to welcoming you back, whether you choose to be here in person or welcoming you back into the classroom remotely in the fall. We miss you, and we hope that you have a wonderful afternoon. So with that, thank you for your time. Thank you everyone for joining us. And I believe we're going to show the webinar link at the Healthy Brown site. Please know that we have a series of other things. There's a session on leave taking, for example, on Monday. Good afternoon, everyone.